Welcome to Faith and Freedom 250, a video series from the Herzog Foundation honoring the role of faith in shaping America's story. I'm Daryl Jones. Today we take a closer look at how churches and religious institutions laid the foundation for schools, hospitals, and charities across this nation long before government stepped in. Let's begin.
Churches and religious institutions played major roles in establishing much of what Americans now consider essential to any community. From colonial times through the early 20th century, churches were at the forefront of bringing education, healthcare, and charitable assistance to their neighbors. The institutions they founded and the spirit they instilled in the American character still endure today.
Why were churches the leaders in promoting what we now think of as secular necessities? The answer predates the United States itself. In the colonial period, there was no American national government. Each colony operated under the terms of its legal charter. From far across the Atlantic Ocean, the British King and Parliament provided little or no provision for these types of social services. As a result, churches in each town or village filled that void. They became the center of community life. In fact, many of today's schools, hospitals, and charities can trace their roots directly back to colonial churches. So let's take a closer look.
Education was important to early American churches. Churches were often responsible for the first formal instruction children received outside the home. The primary motivation for this? Teaching children to read the Word of God. As churches grew, Sunday schools evolved into more formal academic settings. And as the need for trained clergy expanded, churches founded colleges to prepare future ministers. Some of the earliest and most prestigious American institutions, Harvard, William and Mary, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Brown, Rutgers, and Dartmouth, were all founded by churches for this purpose.
In the generation following the establishment of the nation, Elizabeth Ann Seton, one of the first Americans canonized by the Roman Catholic Church, founded the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph, as well as the first free Catholic school in the United States. Her efforts launched a lasting legacy of Catholic education in America. As Americans expanded westward in the 19th century, Methodist ministers on the frontier founded schools across the growing country. But even before that, Catholic missions in the West, established during Spanish colonization, had already educated local communities. These mission schools, often aimed at instructing indigenous peoples, served settlers in the Southwest and California long before the Revolution.
Hospitals followed a similar path of development across the nation. Healthcare and science were still very primitive in colonial times. With few trained physicians, medical care for Americans often was comprised of a mixture of basic first aid, home remedies, and even superstition. As advancements in medicine occurred, church members found purpose in caring for the sick, injured, and disabled members of their own communities.
Rooted in biblical teachings and inspired by a Christian duty of care or corporal works of mercy as the Roman Catholics taught, churches led the way in caring for those in need, initially helping the sick and suffering in their homes or church facilities. Religious groups soon established hospitals to treat those in their care. Religious orders staffed by Catholic nuns serving in a variety of capacities often ran these hospitals with one physician leading the group. Protestant churches followed the same model with lay members of each denomination serving as nurses, orderlies, and caregivers.
Many of the hospitals founded by churches still exist today, hundreds of years later. The current nationwide community of hospitals is full of those named for saints and religious denominations. Even hospitals with more generic names trace their roots back to institutions with deep religious ties.
Equally important in the development of communities alongside schools and hospitals have been charities. These organizations were designed to fill in the gaps where care is often most needed. Their genesis was simple. The care of the underprivileged or underserved has always been a burden carried by private citizens with financial means. It is a moral mandate accepted by many religious Americans to care for the oppressed, the poor, or the troubled.
Charitable organizations existed long before city, state, or federal governments began to provide a social safety net for American citizens. Before the progressive movement of the early 20th century and the expansion of government under Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, nearly all social services came from religious institutions, benevolent organizations, and private citizens moved by faith. These efforts were found in food kitchens, homeless shelters, temperance societies, orphanages, and mission houses across the nation. These safe havens were often run directly by churches or by volunteers who banded together for a common purpose to address serious needs within their respective communities.
Charities also address the social and developmental needs within communities. Some of the best-known organizations of today, like the Salvation Army and the Young Men's Christian Association, YMCA, were founded as explicitly Christian ministries. The Salvation Army focused on poverty relief through evangelical and moral teachings. The YMCA promoted the spiritual, physical, and social development of young Christian men. Both organizations are still active today and serve a variety of community needs. Though their scope has broadened, their roots are deep with religious movements of the 19th century.
The world was a very different place when this nation was founded. Communities had little reason or ability to rely on government to provide for social needs. The main functions of the federal government were limited: protecting national security, issuing hard coinage, and establishing national policy. State governments operated within their own restricted spheres of policymaking and action. That left communities, and the churches at their center, to care for their less fortunate neighbors and friends. The reward for such care and compassion was not temporal, but eternal. Because of this, the United States owes a great debt to the religious communities and faithful individuals who stepped forward and led the way in building this nation's first schools, hospitals, and charities.
From the very beginning, churches and people of faith built the first schools, hospitals, and charities in America, not because they had to, but because they believed it was right. Their legacy lives on in the institutions and values that still shape this country. Thanks for joining us for the Faith and Freedom 250. I'm Daryl Jones with the Herzog Foundation. See you next time.